in California, something like 60% of all domestic investments in clean energy are happening here. And we've had significant policy wins to do that. Renewable energy, energy efficiency, cleaner fuels, incentivizing cleaner construction materials like steel and rebar all passed in California. And we've seen those investments go to cities, the Central Valley, the desert, and all across the state. And as that's happening, we've seen that labor's played a major role in the design of that. Today's panel is to take a deeper dive in one area, transportation and transportation manufacturing. To put this opportunity into context, California has put forward a goal that by 2030, we will put 5 million zero-emission vehicles on the road. And at the end of this month, at the end of September, California will vote on at ARB, one of the state agencies, will vote on a rule that will transition all of California's buses to zero-emission vehicles by 2040. So California, again, wants to be a leader in the zero-emission space. As discussed, as related to transportation is a huge area. And throughout this week, to be back, there are a number of full-day panels, half-day panels on transportation alone. We have an hour to talk about transportation. And even within transportation, as it's a major area that impacts a whole host of workers everywhere from the construction of the buses to the operations to the maintenance to the infrastructure of the new ways of power buses, all have real impacts on workers. But today, even within that, we're going to focus on one session or one aspect of that, which is the manufacturing space. Given that, we have some great speakers who can really talk about this emerging market. So just one piece of housekeeping is please be all managing all cell phones, please just silence them. And then I will also try to save time for questions. At the end, we did some time with this interesting transition time, so we'll still try to end at 5. But that said, I think we should have a great conversation. So now to my amazing speakers here. The following speakers here represent unions and member organizations which represent unions and other groups, including environment, equity, and community groups. So rather than me doing the introduction, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So folks, if you can please tell us your name, describe your organization, your role within that, and if you're in a union, just talk a little bit about what your union does, because I'm not sure if everyone understands when we say labor or sheet metal or UAW, what that means. So if you can talk a little bit about that in about 2 minutes each. And then for the folks that represent organizations, we can talk about who's in your organization.
Cool. Thanks, JB. And it's really exciting to be here on this panel. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's a great group of folks. Well, JB, you've taken half of my. I also work for BlueGreen Alliance. And as JB said, we're a coalition of labor and environmental organizations that work on how do we build a new generation of good jobs in an increasingly clean and fair economy. I direct PGA's Vehicle and Advanced Transportation Program, and I'm really thrilled to be here with a set of panelists who are all at the forefront of what it actually takes to build a new generation of good jobs, specifically in the vehicle sector, which is a hugely important sector. And I think with that, I'll just hand over to the next person because I think I would love to hear where they're from. I would just say, what union we're in. It just so happens that we are steelworkers. I'm a member of Steelworkers Local 2002.
Alyssa, Giachino. I'm with the United Auto Workers, and specifically what I work on is our organizing efforts at the Tesla plant here in the Bay Area. I manage research and policy work as part of that.
Hi everyone, great to be here with you all and to share this panel with such amazing speakers. My name is Erika Patterson, and I'm the California Director for Jobs to America. And for folks who might not be familiar with our organization, we're a national nonprofit with regional community and labor coalitions in California, Illinois, and New York, as well as a national coalition. And together with our partners at the AFL-CIO, our 7 international union partners, and BGA, we advocate that transit agencies find new buses and rail cars or investing in new infrastructure, that they create good jobs while they're making these purchases and pathways for disadvantaged communities.
Hi, Willy Solorzano with the Smart Local 105 out of LA. Our union represents in LA about 6,000 members in construction. And we have every state, one of our locals. Total of Smart members, we got about, I would say, 250,000 members, both in the United States, Puerto Rico, and Canada. And we're very excited because about 8 months ago, we had a campaign with a company called BYD, which is two gentlemen work there. Danny Alvarez, Chris Espinoza. And back then, the campaign, when we started, they had about 200 employees. At the present time, they got 700 right now. And they just bought another 150 acres to make the facility a lot bigger. And I'm the face of the union for this guys over here. And we're very excited that we're creating new jobs and identity jobs for careers for the employees.
Great. So before we dive into the policy, let's sort of set the stage of what's happening in the industry. So if you can give us about 5 minutes or so to tell us historically about the role of the vehicle industry in creating jobs and how that compares to these growing EV markets.
Sure, and I think one of the reasons we're all here is there's a lot at stake here. The auto industry, transportation manufacturing as a whole is at the heart of American manufacturing. It's at the heart of advanced manufacturing, and it's been a critical driver of American innovation for decades. There are about 1 million manufacturing workers in the auto sector, give or take 200,000 in automotive assembly and another 750,000 making components and technology for vehicles. That's without counting the workers in areas like automotive steel and aluminum, glass, rubber, plastics, etc. It's a huge part of our auto sector. To give just a little snippet, obviously we had a terrible manufacturing downturn before the recession. The auto industry is maybe, 15% of U.S. manufacturing, but 40% of all net manufacturing jobs brought back since the recession in the auto sector. The auto industry is also at the heart of clean energy patents. You folks out here may think that clean energy patents only happen in California. In fact, California and Michigan are neck and neck since 2002 in cumulative clean energy patents. I just throw that out there. But the industry has also been at the heart of building a middle class, not just for white workers, but opportunities in the auto industry helped fuel the great migration of black workers into northern cities in the middle of this century, where those workers and their organizations were at the forefront, organizations like the UAW and others, and in cities like Detroit and Flint, in leadership in building the union movement and the civil rights movement. And bringing right up to the current day, when we look at the recovery from catastrophic job loss in the 90s and 2000s in manufacturing, when we see the recovery from that in recent years, it shows how when stakeholders come together and when policymakers prioritize both the environment and domestic manufacturing and jobs at the same time, we can in fact transform industries in ways that meet labor and environmental goals together. Emissions reductions under America's landmark fuel economy standards are the largest single step the nation has ever taken to cut carbon emissions on the scale of what would have been, assuming it continues, on the scale of what would have been done under the Clean Power Plan, and as well as bringing billions of dollars in savings to consumers. And what people may not know is the bipartisan deal that started that, the new generation of emissions reductions in the auto sector went hand in hand with not only the auto recovery loans in around 2009, but with something called the Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing Loan Program. People recognize that when we build, we have strong environmental standards to clean up cars is going to create new investment, but that investment might not necessarily be in America. And the loan program not only supported the retooling of 13 Ford facilities to build all kinds of cleaner conventional vehicles, but it was responsible for making possible the greenfield assembly facilities that build the Nissan Leaf and Tesla. And so over the past decade, under the clean vehicle standards, while we've achieved these amazing environmental goals, we've also brought back over 700,000 jobs in the auto sector, 340,000 of them in manufacturing. And it has caused tens of billions of dollars in added investment in plant and equipment and manufacturing communities all across America. Meanwhile, the industry has also come back to competitiveness and growth and competitive strength. That being said, however, the industry today is at a crossroads. Globally, the industry is rapidly moving towards an increasingly electrified powertrain. And this is not a new industry, but it is a significant technological shift in a key manufacturing sector. And it's a technology and manufacturing race that nations across the world are putting huge financial and policy resources behind winning. In 2011, there were 3 electric vehicle models for sale in the US. They sold about 20,000 units. This year, there are 50, more than 50. We have a new report that's just coming out, and we have a chart, and I counted it one time, it was 51, another one it was 52. I will count it properly before we do the press release. But it's more than 50 from virtually every automaker, and they're on track to sell 250,000 units this year alone. Today, also, many of the market-leading vehicles are built here in the US, along with, and we have also hundreds of companies across the nation, not on the coast, not just on the coast, but truly across the nation in the EV supply chain. However, if we as a country are not just going to buy and drive electric vehicles, but actually continue to capture the manufacturing jobs and economic benefits of building that technology here, the actions that we're taking now will be critical. To succeed, we need stronger, not weaker, which is the way we're headed currently, just recently, policy and investment to continue to lead globally, but also a stronger movement to achieve those gains. And that depends on what kind of industry we're building. And let's not make any mistake, we are also at a crossroads for workers. Conditions for workers in the automotive sector have been under a multi-decade attack, as they have been for all workers, and particularly the manufacturing sector. Research that we have underway that we're just about to release shows that wages, benefits, and working conditions in the EV sector vary widely. Advanced and electric vehicles can be built and are being built today in factories where workers earn middle-class wages and benefits, and where they can expect a safe and healthy workplace when they go to work every day, where they have a voice at work to address equity and advancement issues and the shape of technology transition in the workplace today. But at the same time, even in very high value-added advanced manufacturing facilities, workers can face much lower wages, insecurity, and very hazardous working conditions.
Let me cut you off there a little bit and talk about some of the policies that we're doing to address both creating good jobs and or addressing the issue where we're seeing that we might be running these problems that you just mentioned. So Alyssa, she talked about earlier, we're trying to get 5 million cars on the road. And so we just talked about the potential growth, but also seeing this crossroad we're in. So you've been working on some interesting policies on how do we create and ensure that we're getting good cars on the road. Can you also tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and thank you for that setup, Zoe, because I think that she's giving us sort of a global and a national picture within the auto market. We're here in California, right? California's 5th largest economy, huge consumer market for all kinds of consumer goods, including vehicles. And we have to date purchased more than 40% of the electric vehicles sold in the United States are here in California. So this is an enormous market. Wherever the automaker is based, the consumer market is here. There are a number of reasons for it, right? having to do with the economic strength, and believe it or not, we still have a middle class, I don't know for how much longer, but right, that can afford, because there is a price differential still for EVs. And another huge motivator that has helped juice the market here is we subsidize with our public dollars, right, as part of our cap and trade programs. The state has invested $500 million in rebates, just consumer side rebates for people buying plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles, right? So there's an enormous public investment of dollars in these vehicles because we have an objective to reduce greenhouse gases. Over time, that policy has evolved due to great advocacy work, to also take in equity concerns, and so at some point we realized, oh, whoops, we're actually just subsidizing rich people who could afford to buy the car without the subsidy, right? And so the state put an income cap on the rebates, and also added additional rebates for low-income communities who, of course, suffer the worst effects of poor air quality and greenhouse gases, right? And so we've adjusted that policy not only to address greenhouse gas reduction, but to also start to address equity concerns. Where we still need to go on this policy is thinking about, on the manufacturing side, who's building these cars and what conditions are they building the cars in. And the EV market, as these guys have laid out, it's growing very quickly right now in terms of the number of models. Every automaker has poured already hundreds of millions of dollars into developing the technologies, and the cars are increasingly out on the road. If there are 50 now, 2 years from now, there will be 65, right? Like every auto manufacturer is racing to get their vehicles into the hands of consumers. Most of them still, many of them are built by union workers across the world, including in the United States. The best selling EV in 2017 in California was a Chevy Bolt, with the B, the full EV, and then there's also the Volt with this V, that's a plug-in. Both of those cars, like GM's announced that they're upping their manufacturing because demand has exceeded their expectations, right? So California is helping generate that demand through the rebate that brings down the cost out of pocket to consumers. We have also, as a state, subsidized the manufacture of the Leaf. The Leaf is built in the south of the United States. It is a non-union factory. The conditions there are terrible for workers, right? I think in the last couple of years there were 4 fatalities in the manufacturing plant, right? The health and safety record is terrible. They depend on thousands of temp workers who are perma-temps that never get an actual permanent job. They're like relegated to sort of second-class citizenship. Of course, there's a lot of anti-union activity. So we Californians have subsidized Nissan's creation of a car under conditions that are contributing enormously to the degradation of jobs that historically created multi-generational opportunities to be in the middle class, right? So we're at a crossroads right now where we need to make smart policy decisions to incentivize the industry to not seek the low road. Unencumbered, that's what the industry will do, right? And since we're in California, I'm also going to talk about Tesla, right, which is the auto manufacturer on the West Coast, a very exciting, innovative company, created unprecedented demand for a vehicle where people are willing to sit on a waiting list and put down a deposit and hang out for 2.5 years, not knowing when their car, like, that's never happened, right? Where Tesla is successful as an innovator in developing some of the technology in the cars, there is nothing innovative about their approach to labor. It is 19th century, right? They are actively blocking efforts of workers to unionize in their plant. There have been 3 complaints issued by the National Labor Relations Board for retaliation, harassment, intimidation of workers. The CEO is active on Twitter. Who knows that? And he has attacked the UAW. He's used his Twitter platform to attack the UAW. He threatened to take away stock options if the workers unionized, which resulted in a complaint a couple of weeks ago from the NLRB. So it's a very traditional anti-union environment in a very innovative, exciting company, which has been, continues to deeply disappoint us because the workers in that plant are so proud to be part of that company. They are so proud to be building those cars, and there is nothing they want more than to work there for their entire careers, right? And not be injured. And to help put these cars out into the world and make the company successful. And they want to contribute their idea. They're on the front lines. They're like, we can help with your production problems. Like, we can identify the inefficiencies. We know what's not safe, right? We know how to fix some of the problems that this company is having, and they won't give us a voice, right? So health and safety has been an enormous problem for Tesla. They've gotten a lot of negative press around it. They're very sensitive about the issue. They have made big pronouncements about their commitment to improving their health and safety record. We hope they're serious about it. There's a big lag in the data, so what we have right now is anecdotal evidence that there are still really serious problems. The Center for Investigative Reporting put out an in-depth article a couple of months ago where they found that Tesla was deliberately underreporting injuries to make their numbers look better. So it's a company that really is emblematic of where we're at in this transition, right? They're seeking a low road, high road on the product side and a low road on the manufacturing conditions side. We hope that the state can incentivize them and Nissan and every other EV manufacturer to take a high, right? We're investing our public dollars in it. Let's get a return on those public dollars that helps create strength in our communities, right? Workers who are not injured, who can work for decades, who can develop their skills, who can participate economically in their communities through fair wages, through health insurance, but also through fair work, right? People are working in 14-hour shifts and then commuting an hour and a half in each direction, right? That has a negative impact on our communities too. And so the legislature here in California in 2017 took a big step, and the governor signed it saying we want to attach a labor standard. We want to ensure that before we're handing out those rebate dollars, we certify that manufacturers are fair and responsible in their treatment of their workers. Because that's also part of our objective as a state, right? Not just to drive down greenhouse gases, but also to create a strong green economy. We didn't quite get that language codified this year through the legislative session, but we continue to work with our partners that includes BlueGreen and JMA and a lot of EJ groups, environmental health groups, and of course labor, to try and ensure that the state requires labor standards as part of handing out the money, right? We'll continue to work to codify fair and responsible standards so that we can incentivize manufacturers. Let's create good jobs for the long term.
Great. You guys have been focusing a lot on creating good manufacturing jobs in mass transit. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that maybe first I'll share a little bit about why we decided to focus on mass transit. We were looking at procurement on the whole, on a national scale, and in our initial research we found that federal, state, and local governments spend roughly $2 trillion every year procuring new goods and services. And then if you take a step, if you take a closer look, U.S. transit agencies collectively spend $5.4 billion buying new rail cars and buses every year. And that's a significant amount of money, and that's all public tax dollars. And so we wanted to better understand what kind of job prospects that could generate with the right policies, like Alyssa was laying out, but on the procurement side through a public agency. And so we worked with our partners at UMass Amherst to determine what does this job prospect look like. And if 100% of the buses and rail cars that our transit agencies are buying were made here in the U.S., that could generate up to 56,000 jobs, direct jobs, and then we know from the great work of BGA that there could be thousands more that could be created on the supply chain side. And so, as Zoe mentioned, the manufacturing sector used to be the backbone of the middle class in this country, and the U.S. used to be the center of passenger transit innovation. But through Through deindustrialization and the move towards private automobile ownership and globalization, we've lost a lot of what we had on the passenger transit side of manufacturing. And of course, some of you might be familiar with Buy America, which is a federal statute that has protected what remains for transit manufacturing in this country. But the way that language is written does very little to protect the quality of jobs or to create pathways for communities of color, low-income folks, people facing barriers to employment. And so in our research, we also found, as others have mentioned already, that the remaining jobs that are here, they tend to be lower in value, kind of work that's being performed, lower paid jobs, and often with serious health and safety risks. One of the companies that we were engaging, for instance, did not provide proper scaffolding, a worker fell off, they punctured their lung, and they were asked to fill out paperwork instead of being brought to the hospital. And so we wanted to figure out how can we raise standards in this industry with the $5.4 billion that are already being spent, while bringing back and reshoring a lot of the jobs that we lost during deindustrialization. And so we had the perfect opportunity to test something out with our local transit agency when they informed us that they were looking to buy $1 billion worth of rail cars back in 2011. And they were actually very interested in figuring out how can we get those rail cars built in our backyard. And so we were excited because it's aligned with our research and our priorities. And we tried to figure out something. Then we realized, oh, you're using federal funds. So that means that federal rules apply and you can't do local hire on this project. So we worked with the FTA and LA Metro to do a workaround, which is now known as the U.S. Employment Plan, and it conforms to federal regulations. And what it is essentially contracting language that can be included on a request for proposal for new buses and rail cars. And the companies that are vying for that contract can get additional points for the jobs that they commit to create, the quality of those jobs, how much they're going to invest in workforce development and apprenticeship programs, whether they're going to partner with community-based organizations to make sure that access to those jobs is open to everyone. And so that was the first contract that we were able to get the U.S. Employment Plan on. And we saw it drive competition upwards from all of the manufacturers. Everyone increased the job commitments that they initially had. And the results are pretty remarkable. The winning company was a Japanese headquartered company known as Giachino. And they said that they increased their job commitments from 50 jobs initially for LA County to 250 jobs after the USP was added to that. And since then, they've created over 400 jobs